and welcome to the Commonwealth Report. I'm State Senator Mark Pacheco, and tonight I have the pleasure of actually interviewing one of my colleagues, Senator Michael Moore, who's the chairman of the Higher Education Committee in the legislature, the Senate chair, from the 2nd Worcester District. So we're going to talk about higher education and what's happening in Massachusetts and what's happening nationally, actually, in higher education. So please stay tuned, and we'll be right back with Senator Michael Moore from Millbury. Thank you.
If I got to go to college, oh my goodness. I just feel like that's my destiny. You get to make like a supernova of skill or talent or whatever it is. My name is Queen, and I am your dividend.
Welcome back to the Commonwealth Report. And tonight I'm very pleased to have a colleague that I serve with in the Massachusetts Senate, Michael Moore. We have two senators by the last name of Moore, you know, and people are always asking, well, is it Michael Moore, is it Richard Moore? Well, tonight we have Michael Moore with us. He represents the 2nd Worcester District, correct?
Yes.
And he's a Democrat from Millbury, actually, right?
Yes, from town of Millbury.
How big is Millbury?
Well, 13,000 people.
13,000 people.
It's located probably right in the middle of the Senate district. So I have the southern half, the city of Worcester, and then the bordering towns, and Millbury is located right in the middle. So it's perfectly located as far as access to all the other communities.
Well, thank you for taking the time and coming on the Commonwealth Report. And,
it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Saying hi to everybody out there in southeastern Massachusetts, in particular.
Yeah, no, it's thank you again for having me. I think it's a great opportunity to actually let your constituents know what's going on in higher education today.
Yes, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted you to come on, because obviously higher education is a huge issue for Massachusetts. Both public and private. I mean, we're known throughout the world as the leader. Yep. And wanted to have the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about that issue and to get your perspective as to where we are on this critical issue. But before we get into the issue specifically, let me just ask you a little bit more about you, which we don't do in the Senate that much, talking
That's
to
true.
you. But
it's always about other people's issues.
other people's issues. But let me just ask you how you got involved with this. We have talked about it just a little bit off camera, but I know you give the viewers a little bit of background on Michael Moore.
Well, I come from the town of Millbury. You know, if someone had asked me 20 years ago if I ever thought I was going to be in the state Senate or even the representative, which I wasn't, but in the state Senate, this was never something I had a long-term goal of. When I graduated high school, went to college, and it was actually funny. I went to a private college, and I got a grant at that point to play basketball, and but even then, because this deals with student debt, even then at that point, again, this was probably 30 years ago, I looked at the numbers, and at that point it was going to be graduating with $24,000 in student debt. So I left, I went to a state school, wasn't really sure what did I want to do with my life, and an opportunity came up to try to work for the state environmental police. I took advantage of that, went to the police academy, found out I enjoyed the criminal justice aspect of it, and out doing the environmental work. And that led to me working with the environmental police for approximately 22 years. But 18 of those years I spent right across the street in the Attorney General's office, where I was assigned to what was called the Environmental Crime Strike Force. And we did criminal investigations into the illegal disposal of hazardous waste, solid waste, medical waste, wetlands violations, any environmental statute that had a criminal penalty. We did the investigations for the Attorney General's office. And because the environmental police were a small organization, there were roughly about 100 officers, and I was located across the street, they asked me, the union came to me and asked me if I'd be interested in working with the union as far as a liaison with the legislature. So I did that for several years before eventually becoming the president of the union. But it was actually interesting when I first got elected to the Senate. Some of those same people I dealt with when I was with the environmental police working for their issues. Senator Rosenberg was chairman of Ways and Means. Senator Menard, at that point, she was actually the House Majority Leader. Senator Brewer, I had known from those times. Senator Martigny, I had met because New Bedford being part of the having big marine fisheries aspect. Our agency used to deal with them. So my interaction with the legislature, when I ended up getting married and moving back to my hometown in Millbury, I was asked to run for selectman in the town. Did that, and I served on the board for 8 years, and then I left the environmental police and went to the Worcester Sheriff's Office, where I was working as a deputy superintendent. I was overseeing all the reentry programs outside of the facility. So, and actually the OCC programs, probation programs, I was overseeing for the Sheriff's Office. So we were providing drug counseling, domestic violence programs, education programs, employment programs. We did random drug screening, electronic monitoring, and actually one of the programs I brought there was, it was relatively new at that point, was the GPS monitoring. So we did that. I oversaw the community service programs, and for a short period, about 6 months, I oversaw all the reentry, and I oversaw the what they call their special services, which was the K-9 units, the mobile command, the special tactics unit. So I did that for a relatively short time also, and then the senator who was currently in office, Senator Ed Augustus, announced that he was.
Who I served with.
Yeah, and a great guy, did a great job. Announced he wasn't going to run for re-election, and at that point, I was approached by several people.
New city manager.
Yes, the new city manager was the
manager
interim was the.
Interim.
They're trying to entice him to stay.
Yeah.
It's actually funny. This is one of the few jobs that I think he made a commitment to stay at Holy Cross where he is. He's a vice chancellor, I think, of community affairs or liaison. So the city's trying to get him to stay, but he's made a commitment to go back to the college. So he wasn't going to run, and I was approached by several people for the office, and you know I enjoy public policy. I enjoy it from the town end, where I was involved as the selectman for 8 years, so I knew the town issues of municipal government. Coming from the environmental police end, where I did the environmental work in the AG's office, I had a strong background in environment. I had the labor background, being the president of the union, and I was actually vice president of the parent union, which we represented the parole officers, ABCC, Alcohol Beverage Control Commission, the Bureau of Welfare Fraud. They were in the union, so I had a very broad background there.
And then municipal background.
And then the municipal, and then I was also on the executive board for the Mass Police Association for 3 years. So I had the broad law enforcement experience that I was able to tie in. So you know, it just worked out well. It's something that really excited me, the thought of doing it, and now 6 years later, going for my 3rd term, I'm actually running for my 4th term now. It's just really gone by fast. It's been an enjoyable experience.
And where you are now, because you came into the legislature and you weren't always chair of the higher ed committee.
Yep, started off the chairman of the community development and small business.
Yep. And then appointed as chair of higher ed.
It was actually funny, for the people that don't know Central Mass and Worcester and the surrounding towns, there's roughly about 14 colleges and universities. And when I was going from my 1st to my 2nd term, and as you know, you request your committee assignments, and hopefully they'll give you your request. I had people questioning, why would you pick higher education? It's not one of the more well-known committee assignments. And as you know, 6 years ago, the economy was crashing. Our unemployment rate was high, lower than the nation's, but was still high. I tell people from the district, what better committee assignment that you get to involve with training our future workforce, retraining our current workforce who's lost their jobs, looking at providing hopefully a successful or accessibility to these higher education, post-secondary or higher education services than in the higher education committee. These are kids who are kids who are going to come from the K through 12 system, that we need to provide them the opportunities and accessibility to be successful.
And also now a lot of adults as well that
yeah.
are going back, retraining,
Yeah.
you know, upgrading their skills.
And, you know, everyone, as you know, everyone thinks that that manufacturing, that we're losing all our manufacturing in the United States and Massachusetts. But in actuality, advanced manufacturing is on the increase in Massachusetts. The problem we have, and I was just talking to someone over the weekend about this, we have manufacturing companies, and it's not these sweatshops that people think about from 30, 40 years ago. These are advanced manufacturing facilities where you're operating computers. They have positions opened for skilled laborers or skilled manufacturers that they can't fill because we don't have people that have the skills to fill them.
Right, right.
So so this is where you know I think we've done it the last 3 or 4 years, is trying to tie in our higher education, our workforce development, and our workforce training programs so that we can try to fill these voids.
Well, let's get into the higher education piece. We've just learned, a lot of people in my region of the state have learned a little bit more about your background and what makes you tick, so to speak, in terms of bringing all of those experiences to the Massachusetts State Senate, and then now leading the effort in the Senate on higher education. You know, what do you see in terms of where we have been in terms of budget, and also the impact on students in terms of fees, the tuitions, you know, those types of things that the average family watching the program at home will be interested in terms of funding of higher ed in general, and whether we will be seeing budgets that will have a slight increase, or will they be stable, or will they be decreases, and what about in terms of student fees, you know, tuitions, those types of things. And then we'll get into affordability issues a little later, because I know you've had a special commission that has worked on that within higher ed, and I've read a little bit about what they've done, but I want to talk to you a little bit more about it.
Well, just going into the committee assignment, one of the first things that we did 4 years ago is we have oversight hearings each year, at the beginning of each legislative session, where we have each system come in. So we have the universe. We have 3 systems. Or actually, I guess you could say 4 if you include the private. We have 3 systems. We have the University of Massachusetts system, then we have the state university system, then we have the community colleges, and then we have the private sector. Now, the private colleges and universities, now, unlike most states, most states across the country, the public sector, public colleges and universities, is the predominant university post-secondary system. Massachusetts is actually opposite. We have 29 public-private colleges, universities. The rest are all, I think we got roughly about 130, so public colleges and universities, so the rest are all private. So one thing that we need to concentrate on is actually building collaborations between the two, which we'll get into later on as far as reducing, increasing accessibility and reducing costs for our students. But I found one thing that we had talked about when we had these hearings was the fact that perception is in Massachusetts, our public and private university systems, is that we're number 1 in the country. That we really have a strong emphasis on trying to provide this accessibility to our students and our workforce to these programs. But the problem is, up until 2 years ago, we were actually 38th in the country. We had dropped to 38th in the country for funding our public and private universities. And then last year, we actually went to, we actually provided about $100 million in new funding to our public and private, to our public universities, which brought us to 27th in the country. But for last year alone, we were in the top five in the country, providing new funding to our colleges and universities. Now, what that did do, when we gave that $100 million in funding, we did that with the commitment from the 3 systems, three public systems, that they would hold tuition and fees at that year's rates. Now, this is what people don't understand too, is, and you feel bad for families that will get the call, that in Massachusetts, when you get a full scholarship to cover tuition costs, well, tuition is set by the Board of Higher Education. So the colleges and universities don't set that, the individual campuses. We actually have one of the lowest tuition rates in the country for our students. But the fees are where each college campus sets the fees. So that's, we have one of the highest rates of fees for our colleges and universities. So that, and that's how they were compensating for the reduction in state funding. They would get a they'd get a very small increase from the state in tuition, but they would be increasing their fees to cover their operational costs. So that's why when we did the funding last year, we did it with the guarantee that they would hold the tuition and fees at the current year rate. It was also it was called the 50-50 plan, where we would provide 50% of the funding through state appropriation, and then 50% of they would cover through the fees, and each university system did that. What we also did for our community colleges, and this is something that I never would have thought when I first got the chairmanship, that our community colleges, there wasn't a funding formula. Well, I shouldn't say there wasn't. There was one, but it was so complicated that no one used it. And
but you've changed that a little bit, right?
Yeah,
we went into performance.
We went to performance funding.
Performance funding.
Yeah, and what that did do, this is an example. We had, up until 2 years ago, we had these 5 community colleges that had the highest full-time enrollment were also the 5 that had the lowest funding. So, as you know, in the budget 2 years ago, we actually had a study commission to develop a performance funding formula or program. Most states across the country that have gone to a performance funding model are doing it at a 5 to 10%. 5 to 10% of their funding is based on performance funding. In Massachusetts, we were very aggressive. We actually did 50% of 50% of the funding for our community colleges is based on performance. So they're looking at successful transfers of students from community colleges to 4-year institutions or to other types of certificate programs. They're looking at students who graduate. One deceiving part of our community colleges was that they had a 17% graduation rate, but there were so many factors that weren't being looked at, as far as students that would go to community college, they would leave for a job, they would leave to go to a 4-year institution. So you look at it, statistics didn't look good, but they performed much better, and they had a better role tie into our workforce. Well, by doing this, what we did with performance funding is each community college gets $4.5 million for the base. Then the rest of their funding is based on meeting these certain metrics that we established. We established preference for additional funding incentives for community colleges that create high demand programs. So if we have community colleges that, and this comes from working with the Department of Labor and Workforce Development, that they will identify high demand fields that our workforce needs to go in the future. If community colleges develop programs in those fields, they'll get additional funding.
So what do you see happening this year in say 2014 with budget and do you see a continuation of a
hopefully
freeze?
That was part of the agreement that we had last year, was that we would that last year would be the first year that would follow it up with the second year. The governor and the House have both passed. The governor's budget that went to the House had roughly 60 to $68 million, which should cover the tuition and fees. The problem we have right now is that some of the universities are going through collective bargaining right now. So we don't have a total figure what that will be right now. It cost us last year roughly $100 million in the budget to get to that level. So the House, the initial proposal came in at $60 million. So if they can hold that $60 million through the budget process, then it's going to be up to us to follow through with it. So I'm hopeful that we will maintain our commitment to provide the funding.
Mm-hmm.
Then the only thing we'll have to look at later on in the budget cycle is the collective bargaining agreements that the universities are still currently bargaining. But we, as you know, we always have a line item to cover collective bargaining agreements in the budgets. So
we're going to take a short commercial break, and when we come back, I'm going to ask you, if you wouldn't mind, to drill down just a little bit more in terms of some of the structures that are there in the higher education sector, and some of the challenges that you see that are ahead of us in terms of competing internationally, and what the goals of your committee are for this upcoming, the rest of this term, which, as you know, is quickly
coming
ending.
to a close, yes.
So we'll be right back with Senator Michael Moore.
Up, college is hard. Down, those books are heavy.
My sport is football, but my passion is education. So every year I take promising high schoolers on a college tour to show them that higher education means a brighter future.
My name is Nnamdi Asamoah. I don't just wear the shirt, I live it.
You can be a reader, tutor, or mentor too. Take the pledge at liveunited.org/volunteer.
Do you wear this?
Welcome back to the Commonwealth Report. This is State Senator Mark Pacheco, and I've been speaking with my colleague in the Massachusetts Senate, Senator Michael Moore. He's a Democrat from Millbury, and he chairs the Committee on Higher Education here in Massachusetts. Before we went to the break, we talked a little bit about the structure of higher education. We have the university system for UMass, the state university system, or our state colleges have their own system, and the community college system. And before we went to the break, I told him when we come back I was going to ask him to drill down a little deeper into those systems and really try to talk with us for the remaining part of the time that we have here about the major issues you're dealing with, in each of these systems or across all the systems. What are the major issues that pop up?
Well, the major issues right now is and you mentioned this at the beginning of the show, was the student loan debt, accessibility to programs, the appropriate programs. Over the last 2 to 3 years, we've heard all the media reports of that student loan debt now has exceeded credit card debt. And one thing that our commission recently has done over the last year, we appointed a subcommittee to look at student loan debt, and they just recently
issued their report.
Yeah, just recently issued their report. So there's a lot of findings that we have to go through now and to see if we want to look at doing something in the budget, or do we want to wait until the next legislative session and do a comprehensive approach to this. But a lot of things that can be done right now is that people have to realize that our higher, as we said earlier, even though predominantly right now we have a private sector college and university system that's bigger than the public, our public higher education, public colleges and universities provide an excellent education opportunity, and in some cases at half the cost. You go to a community college, you're paying $5,000–6,000 a year, compared to going to a private institution where you're going to be paying anywhere from $25,000, $30,000, $40,000. What I think parents should realize a lot, and our students, is a lot of it comes with education. You can defer a lot of the costs right now by making good educated choices. We have so many collaborations right now between our public and private schools, and this is where I said earlier, expanding those collaborations is only going to help our students. Just for an example, we have in Worcester, we have Worcester Polytechnical Institute. It's a very highly regarded engineering school. I think the tuition there is $48,000 to $50,000 a year. We have Quinsigamond Community College, which I'm an alumni of. Today they offer an engineering program for again for $6,000 a year. You go to that Quinsigamond for the first 2 years at that $6,000 a year. If you maintain a certain grade point average, you get accepted to WPI for the remaining 2 years. So you've basically just cut your tuition in half So these are the type of programs, and there's many institutions, not just in
Well,
Central
there's
Mass.
been this, I guess in my generation and probably in yours as well, you know, students would come in and they'll say, well, you know, the community college system, well, they want to go right into the state university system, or they want to go to the UMass, go to school at one of the UMass campuses, and they wouldn't think at all about going to the community college level. But we've changed a lot of things during that period of time, and I'm talking about a time when only 25% of the students graduating from high school actually went on to college. That's no longer the case. It's a much higher percentage. The competition is extremely high, even to get into any of the public higher you know, in getting into any of our public higher education institutions.
We have students who are applying to get into the University of Massachusetts system for nursing. We have students applying for our state university systems for nursing and other programs that have 4.0 GPAs that are getting declined. This actually, I think, is going to be an issue in the coming future, is the fact that, you know, we're trying to provide a public college and university system to our students and to our workforce. But when you have students who have 4.0s for grade point average and can't get into our public university system, there's a need to expand that system. We've got to find a way to address it. And maybe it's rather than expanding the public university and colleges system, we could be expanding our collaborations with our private sector friends, because they've got the capacity. They got the capacity, and we can work together where the public schools provide quality education at a reduced cost, and then they can at some point transfer over to the private universities and continue on with their education. That may be the way to go. I think that's really going to be the problem we're going to be looking at is, do we have a system that's capable or large enough to handle this? And this is, I think, what parents have to realize when you're looking at the school for your student. When looking at student loan debt, you got to look at, okay, what's my child going to school for? If you're going to go to school for a,
are they going to be making a salary that you know, affords them the opportunity to pay the very high student debt that is out there at the end of the day?
Exactly. We've got students that have,
depending upon their major.
On their major, that have gone to school for go into social work. Look, it's a commendable field. We need more social workers. But when you come out making $35,000, $40,000 a year, you can't afford to have you can't be going to a school that you're going to have a student loan debt of $100,000. Now, if you go into Mass College of Pharmacy, which is, you know, is a wonderful school, you're going to be a pharmacist. Your income you're going to be making, you can afford to have a larger student loan debt because you're going to have resources, the financial resources to help pay it back. So these are considerations too, and I think parents should be looking at the 529 plans when you're in high school. Right now, a lot of our schools offer advanced placement programs, and these advanced placement programs are accepted in our colleges and universities now as credit-bearing courses. We have dual enrollment programs in high school, so you can, for the students that can get into these programs, it helps reduce your costs when you actually go in.
Okay, we're out of time, believe it or not. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just, if there's one single thing you can tell us all about this, the future of higher education in Massachusetts here, what would you say?
I think that because of the Great Recession, that everyone has realized the value of having a strong public and private higher education system, and public higher education system that is going to meet the needs. That if we're going to continue on to keep moving the state forward and to be providing the skills to our workforce and our families and our kids, which is all about the public, whether it's the governor's office, the legislature, we all realize how important these services are, and to have services that are accessible to our kids.
Well, listen, thank you very much, Michael Moore from the 2nd Worcester District, a great colleague of mine in the Senate. I want to thank him for his leadership
Thank you.
With the Higher Education Committee, and I want to thank all of you for tuning in to the Commonwealth Report. Thank you.